Did the Conservatives deserve to lose?
We didn't lose.
You didn't lose. You did lose.
We didn't lose, just members didn't come out.
I mean, that is the greatest spin I've ever heard. Did the Tories deserve to lose?
Yes.
Yes, completely.
I think most people would say yes, we did.
And they deserve to lose badly.
No, we don't deserve to lose.
We didn't quite deliver. People didn't know really why we were calling the election at the time we did.
I think we have to be honest with ourselves about the fact that we really messed up.
I don't like the Conservative Party. I think I would even go as far as to say I hate the Conservative Party. I just hate the Labour Party even more, and that's why I'm a member of the Conservative Party.
The Tories took a battering in July, and some of them think that they deserved it. But what are they doing now? We're here in Birmingham, where they're talking about who's going to be the next party leader and what direction they should be going in. Why do you think that there's so much trust was lost in the Tory party?
Mainly because they were kept speaking bull. It was just not believable to anybody. And they did some fantastic stuff during their term as well. And
what fantastic stuff did they do?
I feel that people forget how much they supported us through COVID. I think our country would have been bankrupt if we hadn't been given that type of support from the government.
The worst thing a party can do after it's suffered such a bad defeat is to blame the voters. The voters are always right on these things. And over the next 4 or 5 years, we've got to move the political party closer to where the British public is. And that's what this conference is all about.
How do you think that voters are ever going to have trust in the Conservative Party again?
Well, actually, when you look at the figures, they actually didn't leave it as bad as they found it so many years ago. So I think that's a bit of a myth. But I think all the good things were, in some ways, pushed to the side with all the other issues that were coming out. The fact that national insurance was, they planned to cut national insurance, that was a fantastic thing.
It will be a long road. Opposition is always a long road. I've watched every leader of the opposition since 1983, from Neil Kinnock through to Keir Starmer. It will be a long road, but 4.5 years when you get to my age goes quite fast.
I think we need to move back to the centre ground. We do not win elections pandering to the right of the party. We win elections simply by making sure that to voters we are as appealing as possible, and that means being appealing to young people as well.
Guys, you're all pretty young and you're all Tories, and people can say that the Tories have done just a pretty bad job in government.
Agreed.
Why on earth would you still put your faith in this party?
Because the alternatives are either crazy or plain up. There's no way I would ever back a socialist party such as Labour and the Lib Dems at the minute.
Labour aren't a socialist party.
I disagree with that. I think if you look at some of their rhetoric, especially in terms of how they treat people like Conservatives, for example, I think they appear, while they may not be in principle and in practice on policies particularly socialist, they try and create this picture that there's some left-wing, almost Marxist group when they're just not.
Well, the right direction is to go down the route of libertarianism, because that is the right set of policies. Now, will that be electorally popular? Probably not. I don't really know what's electorally popular. I leave that to the politicians.
But do you not feel like you guys are all just part of a sinking ship?
No. I think if you look at the history of the Conservative Party, we have been the most successful party in the UK quite clearly. The best prime ministers in this country have been Conservative and have implemented Conservative values.
What lessons have been learned that you cannot pretend to be Conservative and govern as Labour, which is effectively what we did?
Is that really how they were governing, though? The policies that they were implementing weren't exactly socialist.
Well, in fact, they're exactly the policies this government is doing, letting heavy taxation, letting immigration run rampant. Isn't it true? Name one real radical difference of policy. Rachel Reeves is in the direct continuation of every Conservative Chancellor, racking up tax, failing to tackle the NHS seriously, failing to tackle welfare. We've had, in fact, a Lab-Con government ever since 1997, and that's the disaster.
People do like affordable housing. People do like being able to have children. People like having families and settling down. And we've made all those things somewhat harder to do over the last 20 years. It's not just the Conservative Party, it's the Labour Party too. But over a prolonged period of time, we've stopped young people from having the sorts of opportunities and the sort of life chances that our parents' generations had.
They should be thinking about how to involve more party members, especially the young people like myself, ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, people with the talent to take on a role, not because they may be friends or associates, because that was happening. And that's quite an open discussion at the moment.
I mean, it sounds like you need a real big revolution in the whole Conservative Party to be able to do that.
So the revolution would be new leadership, new mindset, and a lot of blessings where people are normally sending in hate, but we need positive vibes to help this move forward.
We need to recognise that immigration was probably the critical issue at this election that's gone. Conservative governments have been elected repeatedly on a promise to get immigration under to the tens of thousands. It's grown precipitously since we left the European Union, and that's not good enough. So we have to find an answer to that. It needs to be one that's, decent and compassionate. It needs to be one that says to those that want to come to this country and work hard and start families and contribute to British life that you are welcome here.
Do you think the Rwanda policy was a good policy, and do you think that was compassionate?
I mean, manifestly, it hasn't worked, but I think we've seen already that the Labour Party has scrapped it. It doesn't have a deterrent, and the small boat crossings have picked up again.
For me, I think one of the areas people felt we didn't listen to them, one of them came so many times, was immigration. I think what our policy had was something which was working towards actually solving what the people wanted.
So you're saying you think the Rwanda plan would have worked?
To a certain extent, yes, and to a certain extent, maybe we needed to do more before even you go into talking on to Rwanda, was to ask the French government to do their work, and that's what the Conservative government was asking.
I mean, France take more refugees per capita than we do in the UK.
Maybe I may say yes, but how do you actually analyze that to know that they take more? Because I don't believe so, because if they are not doing their job the other side and we are having all the immigrants to us and there is more stress on schools, on hospitals, it means they have to come across the board with us, and how can we work it together as two countries?
I think the left-right dynamic, when we talk about it, gets kind of a bit disjointed. I don't think it's right-wing to want, sustainable levels of immigration, for example. When you have, numbers over 700,000 net immigration in 1 year, I think even ardent, proponents of immigration is a good thing for our society and our economy will have to go, that's a lot to be tackling in 1 year.
Is there any way that you'd be pushed to become a member of Reform?
Yes, I was a member of UKIP in the past, so I'd be open to the idea of going over to Reform.
Really? And is there anything that Nigel Farage would say or promise that would get you to switch over?
A flat rate of income tax at 20% maybe?
Very much against this sort of suggestion that we should have Nigel Farage and other Reform figures sort of integrating themselves into our party. We're not Reform, we're not Nigel Farage's party, we're the Conservative Party. We've been built for the last few hundred years on Conservative principles raised by Disraeli, Churchill and Thatcher, and we should stick to them. I don't know why all of a sudden everyone thinks that to win an election again we need to drastically move to the right.
So you're supporting Kemi. Why are you supporting Kemi Badenoch? Why do you think she'd be the best person for the job?
Well, first, it's not Badenoch, it's Badenoch. There's no bad in Badenoch. But it's because she's a straight talker, she's a straight shooter. She will say it like she sees it. She thinks really deep about the issues that are facing our country, our party, our society.
I think the dangerous thing about Kemi is that if we give her a trust, for example, as we're speaking, it's on the news right now. She's mentioned something highly controversial. She's talked about maternity pay.
If we could have Margaret Thatcher reborn, I'd quite happily vote for her.
And out of the remaining candidates, who do you think's the strongest?
Well, the least weak is probably Kemi Badenoch.
So you don't think any of them are particularly inspiring?
No. I mean, I think it was really embarrassing that Kemi Badenoch said something about maternity pay which was broadly sceptical of the idea of it, and then the moment there was a slight whiff of unpopularity, she went, "Ooh!" and then decided to U-turn.
Do you think she should have kept on going with that maternity pay? Surely that's not a popular thing to say.
I think many things that are right are unpopular, and she should say the right thing as opposed to the thing which is popular, so she should have stuck to her guns.
But pulling out of the ECHR, characterising immigration as the number one issue, saying that not all cultures are equally valid, how is that not to the right?
I think you're really taking one or two sound bites from one or two candidates. Let's see who the Conservative Party choose, and I guarantee you in 4.5 years we'll have an election-winning team.
I mean, some people call her a straight talker, other people would call her divisive.
Well, ultimately, as Margaret Thatcher said, if they're never going to vote for you, it doesn't matter how much they're going to hate you. And ultimately, the message that we put out needs to be strong, it needs to be consistent, it needs to be clear. And yeah, there are going to be some people that don't agree with it. But as we saw with Margaret Thatcher as well, winning 2 landslide majorities and a third election victory as well, you can still win without 100% of the public liking you all the time.
Do you think saying things like not all cultures are equally valid is helpful to building strong local communities which are increasingly diverse and multicultural?
Well, I know the remark you're referring to. I'm interested to hear your views. I think it is manifestly the case that societies and cultures that treat women with equality and dignity are better than those that don't. So on that basis, yeah, I think it's fine to talk about that.
People question me why I'm a Conservative. I've worked since I was 9 years old. I've had 3 months off in my life through pregnancy. So, you know, my father taught me what you put into life, you get back out of life, and nothing's free. And I just feel the ethics of being Conservative is what I represent.
I think it's not necessarily about the results, it's about the values, and for me it's the values of the Conservative Party which are still ones that I do believe in.
And what are those values?
I think self-responsibility, a small state, not necessarily asking questions before you necessarily give handouts.
And whatever you say, even if you're a socialist, people all agree Keir Starmer sucks.
Do you think the Conservatives left anything positive in terms of legacy since 2010?
Yes, I can name one thing.
Yeah, your name?
Equal marriage. It was our government that introduced it, so I think we'll claim that one, yeah. Lib Dems will give us somewhat credit for being, participants perhaps, but no, I think absolutely, there's definitely things you can point at.
That's what we need to do. We need to have a full manifesto that when we go to the next general election appeals to the whole of the country and not just a select few that wants to make sure to stop the votes.
And look, why are you still a Conservative?
My mum, she taught me to take every single opportunity, work as hard as you can. I like my money, I am a business person, I work really, really, really hard to make sure that I get my money for my clients to deliver a service that I do. I don't want a party that's taking away an even further percentage of tax than I'm already paying. For an 18-year-old, I'm paying potentially even already too much tax to even care. I want my freedom, I want my opportunity, and if this party presents that to me, I will stick right by them.
We found out in less than 90 days, Labour can't govern.
What do you think is the major thing that Labour's doing wrong?
Oh, how long have you got? We could talk for the rest of the week about what Labour's doing wrong, but give you 3 examples. 1, insulting your grandparents' generation in terms of pensions. Number 2, their whole issue in terms of you and I buy our own clothes. They don't seem to buy their own clothes anymore.
But the Tories did plenty of taking gifts and donations and not declaring things.
I can't recall a Conservative leader that took that kind of money for clothes.
They were giving contracts to friends, though.
Well, that is, again, your interpretation. I don't think that was the case. But the reality is we all need to do better. Trust in politicians is at an all-time low. And that's how popular we are as a party.